The skyscrapers of Manhattan loomed overhead as I waited in the pristine lobby of Vertex Ventures. My work-worn boots and practical attire stood in stark contrast to the sleek surroundings, but I refused to apologize for who I was. The presentation materials in my tablet contained 2 decades of agricultural innovation, transformed into a vision for urban sustainability that could revolutionize city living. Dr. Sarah Mitchell? The receptionist's voice carried a hint of surprise as she looked up from her desk. Perhaps she'd expected someone different. Someone who looked more like the usual parade of tech entrepreneurs in their designer suits and Italian shoes. Yes, that's me. I straightened my posture, adjusting the tablet under my arm. My doctorate in agricultural engineering from Cornell might have opened this door, but it was my years of practical experience in Hampton Falls, Iowa, that had given me the insights I was here to present. The conference room matched the lobby's aesthetic, all glass, chrome, and carefully cultivated minimalism. 5 investors sat around the polished table, their expressions a mixture of boredom and skepticism. I recognized them from my research. Thomas Chun, the managing partner, Rebecca Santos, their sustainability expert, and 3 senior partners whose portfolios read like a who's who of tech unicorns. Dr. Mitchell, Thomas began, his tone professionally courteous but distant. Your proposal for urban agricultural towers is interesting. However, I'm not sure you understand the complexities of urban development and infrastructure. I loaded my presentation, the holographic display filling the room with 3-dimensional renderings of my designs. With respect, Mr. Chun, I understand them intimately. What you see here isn't just theory. It's proven technology scaled for urban implementation. The images shifted to show the experimental facility I'd built in Hampton Falls. For the past 15 years, I've been developing and refining vertical farming systems that produce 10 times the yield of traditional agriculture while using 90% less water. We've created closed-loop ecosystems that turn agricultural waste into energy and nutrients. Rebecca Santos leaned forward, her interest piqued. These results are impressive, but rural Iowa is hardly comparable to Manhattan. The infrastructure requirements alone are precisely why rural development was the perfect testing ground. I interrupted, pulling up detailed schematics. In Hampton Falls, we had to create systems that could operate with minimal external support. Every resource had to be maximized, every waste product repurposed. We developed solutions that don't just work despite limited infrastructure. They work because of it. The third partner, James Wilson, scoffed openly. No one from a farming community could understand the complexities of urban development. The regulatory environment alone is actually more challenging in agricultural communities. I completed his sentence, keeping my voice level. We've navigated EPA regulations, USDA requirements, and state-level environmental impact studies. Our systems have been vetted by every relevant regulatory body. I switched the display to show real-time data from the Hampton Falls facility. What you're seeing is live feed from our prototype tower. We're currently producing enough fresh produce to supply 30% of our county's needs, using less than 2 acres of land. The system is entirely self-sustaining, generating its own power through biomass conversion and advanced solar integration. The numbers scrolled across the display: crop yields, energy efficiency ratings, water recycling metrics. These weren't projections or estimates. They were proven results, validated by independent auditors and agricultural extension programs. The technology is impressive, Thomas admitted, but scaling it for urban implementation would require billions in investment. The risk is significantly less than continuing with current urban food supply chains, I interjected, bringing up another set of projections. By 2030, traditional supply chains will be increasingly vulnerable to climate disruption. Cities need localized food production not just for sustainability, but for survival. I moved through the presentation methodically, addressing each potential objection before it could be raised. The engineering was sound. The economics made sense. The environmental benefits were undeniable. But I could see in their eyes that something was still holding them back. You're all thinking it, I said finally, closing the holographic display. How can someone from a small farming community possibly understand what cities need? Let me tell you what farming communities understand better than anyone: the relationship between humans and the systems that sustain them. I pulled up one final image, a satellite view showing the gradual transformation of Hampton Falls over the past 15 years. We turned a struggling agricultural community into a model of sustainable innovation. Our systems don't just produce food, They create jobs, generate clean energy, and build community resilience. The room fell silent as they studied the data. Rebecca was taking rapid notes. Thomas's expression had shifted from skepticism to calculation. Even James had stopped smirking. "What you're proposing," Thomas said slowly, "would require unprecedented cooperation between private investment, city government, and community stakeholders." "Exactly the kind of cooperation we've already achieved in Hampton Falls," I replied. "The only difference is scale. And you think you can replicate this success in New York City?" Rebecca asked, her tone more curious than doubtful now. I smiled for the first time since entering the room. "I don't think I know. Because while you've been trying to solve urban problems with urban thinking, we've been developing solutions that work anywhere. The principles of sustainable systems don't change with population density. They just scale." Thomas leaned back, exchanging glances with his partners. "You're requesting $2 billion in initial investment. That's a significant commitment. I'm offering you the chance to transform urban agriculture and energy production simultaneously," I corrected. The Hampton Falls facility generated a return on investment within 3 years. With urban density and market access, we project breaking even within 18 months. I gathered my materials, preparing to conclude the presentation. "You have my proposal. You've seen the data. Now you have a choice to make. You can continue viewing rural innovation as somehow less valuable than urban development, or you can be part of a revolution in sustainable city living." As I turned to leave, Rebecca spoke up. "Dr. Mitchell, would you be willing to host a site visit to Hampton Falls? I think we need to see this technology in action." I nodded, suppressing a smile. They didn't know it yet, but that question had just changed everything. Because once people saw our towers in action, once they understood the full potential of what we'd created, skepticism always turned to conviction. The revolution in urban agriculture wasn't coming from Silicon Valley or Manhattan. It was growing quite literally from the heartland of America. And soon, very soon, the concrete canyons of New York City would bloom with the fruits of rural innovation. The morning sun cast long shadows across Hampton Falls agricultural towers as the Vertex Ventures delegation emerged from their luxury SUVs. Their expressions shifted from professional politeness to undisguised amazement as they took in the sight before them. 3 gleaming structures, each rising 40 stories into the Iowa sky, their surfaces alternating between transparent panels and living walls of vibrant green. "Welcome to the future of agriculture," I said, leading them toward the main facility. "Though around here, we just call it farming." Rebecca Santos removed her designer sunglasses, her eyes fixed on the nearest tower. "The scale, it's extraordinary. Those vertical strips of vegetation, are they part of the environmental control system?" "Among other things," I confirmed, approaching the biometric security entrance. "The external vegetation serves multiple purposes: atmospheric carbon capture, thermal regulation, and biomass production. We've essentially created artificial ecosystems that improve their surrounding environment while producing food." The lobby's displays showed real-time data from all 3 towers: production metrics, energy generation, water recycling rates, and environmental impact assessments. Thomas Chen studied the numbers with intense focus, his earlier skepticism giving way to professional curiosity. "Your energy consumption must be enormous," James Wilson commented, still searching for flaws in the system. I gestured to another display. "Actually, we're net energy positive. The combination of solar panels, wind turbines, and biomass conversion generates 30% more power than we use. We supply clean energy to much of Hampton Falls." The tour proceeded through each level of innovation. We visited the germination chambers, where precision lighting and atmospheric controls created perfect growing conditions. We examined the automated harvesting systems that could detect optimal ripeness for each crop. We studied the water recycling facilities that purified and reused every drop through a combination of biological and mechanical filtration. "The technology is impressive," Thomas admitted as we watched robots delicately transplanting seedlings. "But what truly surprises me is the level of integration. Every system supports multiple functions. That's the advantage of developing this in a rural community," I explained. "We couldn't afford waste or inefficiency. Every component had to serve multiple purposes. Every resource had to be maximized. We turned limitations into innovations." Rebecca was particularly interested in the community impact. "How did you manage the transition? Surely there was resistance to such a dramatic change in agricultural methods." I led them to our community center, where local farmers worked alongside agricultural scientists and technology specialists. We didn't replace traditional farming, we enhanced it. The knowledge accumulated over generations of farming in this region informed every aspect of our design. Our senior agricultural advisors are all local farmers who now apply their expertise to vertical farming. The afternoon concluded in our data center, where AI systems monitored and adjusted thousands of variables across the towers. Thomas studied the interface with growing excitement. This isn't just agricultural technology, he realized. This is a complete template for sustainable urban development. Exactly, I confirmed. Everything we've developed here can be scaled and adapted for urban environments. The only real difference is the surrounding infrastructure, or lack thereof. 1 month later, I stood in the same Vertex Ventures conference room where my proposal had initially been met with skepticism. But now, the atmosphere was entirely different. The board has approved full funding, Thomas announced, sliding the contract across the table. $2 billion, with an option for an additional $3 billion in Phase 2. We want to begin construction in New York immediately. Rebecca added, "We've already secured preliminary approval from the City Planning Commission. Your track record in Hampton Falls convinced them." The first Manhattan Tower broke ground 6 months later. The location, a former industrial site in Brooklyn, symbolized the transformation we were about to undertake. As construction progressed, the media narrative shifted from skepticism to fascination. "Rural innovation revolutionizes urban agriculture," became a common headline. The challenges were different in the urban environment, but our rural experience had prepared us well. We adapted our systems to handle higher pollution levels, integrated with existing infrastructure, and modified our energy systems to serve surrounding neighborhoods. 1 year into construction, the first crisis hit. A major storm knocked out power to much of Lower Manhattan. As backup systems failed across the city, our tower, only partially completed, continued operating, its independent power systems unaffected. City officials took notice. "We want to fast-track approval for additional towers," the mayor's office announced. "Your system's resilience is exactly what this city needs." The completion of the first tower coincided with a global food supply crisis. As traditional supply chains faltered under climate pressures, our urban agricultural system demonstrated its true value. The tower produced enough fresh produce to supply 20,000 households, all while generating clean energy and creating hundreds of local jobs. Thomas Chen's expression as he toured the completed facility was a far cry from his initial skepticism. "I've never been happier to be proven wrong," he admitted. "You didn't just understand urban development, you revolutionized it." 5 years after that first contentious meeting, I stood atop our newest tower, looking out over a transformed cityscape. 12 agricultural towers now rose among Manhattan's skyscrapers, their green surfaces standing in stark contrast to the glass and steel around them. Each tower was a self-contained ecosystem, producing food, generating energy, and cleaning the air. The investors who had once dismissed rural expertise now regularly visited Hampton Falls, seeking to understand the origins of our innovation. The farming community that had inspired our technology had become a global center for agricultural technology, hosting delegations from cities worldwide. Dr. Mitchell, a young reporter asked during a recent interview, "What's the most important lesson from your success?" The answer came easily. Innovation doesn't care about zip codes. The solutions to urban problems don't always come from urban environments. Sometimes you need the perspective of a small farming community to see the big picture. Today, as I divide my time between Hampton Falls and Manhattan, I see the artificial boundaries between rural and urban innovation dissolving. Our towers stand as monuments to what's possible when we stop dismissing expertise based on its origin and start recognizing that sustainable solutions can grow anywhere. The concrete jungle is blooming, transformed by technology born in Iowa's fertile soil. And in the end, that's perhaps the most fitting tribute to the farming community that made it all possible. We're still growing things that feed people. We're just doing it in a way that feeds the future too. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.